They said it so casually, as if it were nothing, as if I were nothing. "Tonight, you'll sleep in the shed." And in that moment, something inside me cracked. I was standing in my own home, yet I had never felt more unwanted, more invisible. I had given my hands until they ached, my heart until it bled, and the years of my life that I will never get back. And all that was reduced to this, banished to a place meant for broken tools, dust, and shadows. Those words cut deeper than any blade. And in that silence, I finally understood what it meant to be truly alone among your own family. "You'll be sleeping in the shed tonight." Clara said it the way someone might mention that the milk had gone bad, or that trash needed to be taken out. Calm, precise, a statement carved so neatly it left no corner for protest. The words hung in the kitchen air, mixing with the sting of bleach and the fading smell of fried onions. They didn't shout, they didn't accuse, but they struck harder than any slammed door. I felt them thump against my chest like a heavy, uninvited hand. I set my mug into the sink with such care that the porcelain didn't dare rattle. At 74, I'd learned the strength of silence. People fear silence more than they fear rage. Daniel didn't look at me. He stood by the back door, his thumb tracing that long scratch in the paint where his son once rammed a scooter years ago. The oak threshold bore like a scar, an old wound never fixed. "It's just for tonight, Dad," he said, voice quivering in that way people try to disguise as firmness, but which always leaks out as exhaustion. "You know how she is about the carpets." I nodded and reached for the dish towel. My hands remember work. I murmured, "They always remember." The towel soaked up the ring my mug had left on the counter, and I focused on that circle, because sometimes it's easier to stare at stains than at eyes that refuse to see you. Outside, the shed sat swollen under the eucalyptus tree, its corrugated roof ticking with the leftover heat of the day. In winter, it sweats and smells of rust and mice. In summer, it reeks of dry grass and unfinished jobs. Clara once called it a garden room, as if syllables could transform air into warmth. She even put a citronella candle in there once, the kind that stings the eyes more than it wards off insects. There would be no candle tonight, only a thin camping mattress that bruises my hip and a spider in the corner who minds his own business better than most people I know. "Emma already brushed your teeth," Clara added, wiping the counter as if my existence had left a smear. "We need the downstairs bathroom free. The plumber said the pressure upstairs won't hold well, it's just easier this way." Easier. That word again. People say easier when what they mean is you. I folded the towel, draped it neatly over the faucet like a scarf. "All right," I said softly. "I'll take a blanket." Clara's lips curled into a smile that never touched her eyes. "Thank you for understanding, Harold." She likes to use my name the way clerks and administrators do, as if formality were the same thing as love. I walked the hallway, and remembered other footsteps, Daniel's as a boy, quick and clumsy, closing the distance between us. The scrape of his late father's drill on a Sunday, the patter of Emma's ballet shoes, the stomps of little Ryan pretending to be a dinosaur. Night air greeted me at the back door, warm and windless. A moth battered the porch light with persistence of a small, even fist. From the tree came the call of a blackbird, each note like a question I had no wish to answer. I gathered a blue wool blanket and a flat pillow from a basket, both unused by anyone else. The lawn was freshly mown, blades sharp against the thin soles of my slippers. When I opened the shed, the familiar scent of cardboard and damp oil rose to meet me. I paused in the doorway. Dignity likes pauses. I could have stepped in, made myself small, pretended this was merely temporary. Instead, I set the blanket across the mattress and stood there. I listened to my own heart beat once, twice, as if it were asking permission to be brave. Courage isn't a leap. It's a turn, a hinge finally oiled. From the house came laughter, a cartoon's giggle spilling out from the living room, Emma's high-pitched squeal, Ryan shouting about rockets, Daniel's low murmur, Clara's lower still, life arranging itself without me, the way water curls around stone. I never wanted to be the stone. I wanted to be soil, quiet, full, necessary. Soil doesn't boast, but it holds everything together. I turned back inside for my cardigan. Clara glanced up, then at the hallway clock, as if time itself might fasten me into place. "Everything all right?" she asked, voice dipped in false concern. I pulled the wool around my shoulders. "Yes," I said, "everything's fine." Daniel followed me to the step. He rubbed his eyebrow the way he used to when he'd broken something and didn't know how to confess. "It's just one night," he said. "Tomorrow I'll sort the guest room. We'll clear space. Tomorrow, I echoed, tasting the word like weak tea. Good night, Dad. The shed door closed with the softest click. I laid the blanket, set down the pillow, and sat without lying. Silence seeped in, companionable as an old friend who never asks for more than you can give. Dust turned in the shaft of light from the small window, a galaxy for ants. On the workbench, a jar of screws caught the porch glow and crowned itself in silver. I took a pencil in the back of an old bill, writing 3 lines in a hand still steady. Bank tomorrow. Council office after locksmith. I tucked the pencil behind my ear. From the house came a flush, a tap running, a door closing. None of those sounds carried my name. That was fine. Names are for calling people. I can call myself. I pulled the blanket tighter and let the night sit beside me, quiet as loyalty. I didn't open the door right away when the knock came. At my age, knocks can mean anything, from a neighbor with pie to trouble uninvited. Through the small pane, I saw Daniel. No smile, no groceries in his hands. Just him, standing stiff in work clothes, shifting like a boy caught stealing apples. Still, I opened. You changed the locks, he said, eyeing the new brass glint above the handle. That's right, I answered. Come in, if you can manage it without shouting. He stepped inside, gaze darting as though the room had rearranged itself along with the locks. Dad, you can't do this. You just can't. I cut him off. And I did. His jaw tightened. We've got bills, the car payment, the shed. It's the shed? I repeated, voice colder than December air. He flinched, eyes sliding away. You weren't supposed to hear that. Oh, but I did. I took a step closer, slow and deliberate. Last week you said it. He'll sleep in the shed tonight. Your wife laughed. You thought I wouldn't notice. I always noticed, Daniel. He rubbed his neck, the way his father once did when cornered. It was a joke. You're misunderstanding. No, I said, I understand exactly. He tried another tactic, softening his tone. We're under pressure. You know that. The mortgage, the work. And I helped. I pointed at the cabinet stacked with folders. Every loan, every grocery bill, every school fee for your children. It's there, my handwriting, my sacrifice. But this house, I met his eyes, is mine. My name is on the deed, and I decide who sleeps under this roof. His face flushed, not with shame, but with frustration. You're making a mistake. This family forgot I was part at the moment I stopped being useful. I said, so yes, I changed the locks. And some other things too. You'll find out soon enough. For the first time since entering. He looked unsure. What's that supposed to mean? I poured myself tea, not offering him any. It means the shed stays empty. And as far as you're concerned, so does my bank account. The hall clock ticked, steady as my pulse. When he finally left, the door closed quieter than I expected. I kept my hand on the cold brass of the new lock and felt something loosen inside me. Not anger, not revenge, just the realization that, for the first time in years, I had drawn a line, and I wasn't going to move it. The morning after Daniel left, I rose before the sun. Not because I couldn't sleep, though sleeplessness comes often, but because my thoughts had already walked ahead of me, clearing a path. The kettle hissed on the stove, a sound that once meant company, now only filled the room with ghosts of conversations past. I spread my folders across the table, pages like brittle leaves. 14 years of bank statements, each transaction cataloged by my own hand, withdrawals in Daniel's handwriting, gifts for the children that were never acknowledged, repairs that never happened, loans that disappeared into silence. I tracked it all, not because I wanted proof, but because part of me hoped that someday they would see what I had given, what I had carried for them. Gratitude, I used to believe, was like a letter waiting to be delivered, but gratitude never arrives. It dies in the post. By 8 o'clock, I was dressed in my best coat. Today was not for staring at papers. Today was for closing doors that had stayed open too long. At the bank, the manager, young enough to be my grandson, smiled with a kind of politeness that always masked curiosity. Mr. Whitmore, what can we do for you today? I want to change access on my accounts, I said, sliding my ID across the counter. Remove all additional names. No shared permissions. Just mine. His eyebrows twitched. That would mean your son won't be able to. Yes, I cut in. That's the idea. We reviewed signatures, security questions, confirmations. I asked for printed copies of everything. My father once told me, A man who doesn't keep his own records is a man waiting to be robbed. From the bank, I walked to the solicitor's office. The receptionist offered me coffee. I declined. My solicitor, Mrs. Kent, had eyes that always seemed to know what you were going to say before you said it. I'd like to update my will. I told her. And I want the deed of the house transferred fully into my name. No shared claims. No survivorship clauses. Only me, unless I choose otherwise. Her pen paused. She didn't ask why. She simply began writing. You want to name new beneficiaries? Yes, I said. Directly to Emma and Ryan. A trust locked until they're 30. By then they'll understand the value of earning something, not just inheriting it. She gave a small smile. Practical. It took hours. But by the time I left, my life on paper was no longer what it had been that morning. It felt strange, walking out of that office lighter, like putting down a heavy bag you didn't know you were carrying. On the way home, I stopped at the locksmith again. I'll need 2 more sets of keys, I told him, and a deadbolt for the back door. He looked at me as though I'd announced I was fortifying a castle. Maybe I was. Back in the kitchen, I brewed tea and sat once more with my folders. Then I locked them away in the cabinet, turned the key, and slipped it into my cardigan pocket. Outside, the eucalyptus whispered in the breeze, its leaves brushing against each other like conspirators. This wasn't about shutting Daniel and Claire out entirely. Though a sharp part of me wanted them gone for good, it was about putting locks where they belonged. On my time, my money, my peace. I thought of the shed. Tomorrow I'd clean it out, maybe make it into a workshop, a room for myself. Not a punishment, a sanctuary. The phone rang near evening. Clara's voice, all sugar and patience, stretched thin. Daniel said you were busy today, running errands. Yes, I replied, stirring my tea. What kind of errands? Her voice tightened like a noose. The kind that keep me warm at night, I said, and sipped slowly. Silence at the other end. A long silence. Well, she finally said, I hope you're not doing anything reckless. I've lived long enough, I answered, to know the difference between reckless and necessary. After I hung up, I stood at the kitchen window, watching the light fade from the garden. The shed roof caught the last rays, gold for a moment before sinking into shadow. Things shine before they vanish. And I realized I no longer feared the dark, especially when I had my own light to switch on. That night, the first snow of the year fell. By morning, the garden lay under a white blanket, soft and silent. I shoveled the path myself. Slow but steady. Daniel came out mid-morning, frowning. You shouldn't be out in this weather, he said. You'll catch your death. I leaned on the shovel. I'd been close to death before. It never caught me. Don't worry on its behalf. He sighed. Dad, we need to talk about money. I rested both hands on the shovel. Do we? Or do you need to? His jaw clenched. It's not just us. Emma's school fees, Ryan's activities. Your children, I said firmly. Your responsibilities. I helped long enough. Now it's your turn. He looked as though I'd struck him. You're punishing us. I let the snowflakes settle on my coat before answering. No, I'm reminding you where the lines are. You blurred them. I'm drawing them again. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words froze, just like the breath between us. Finally, he turned back toward the house, leaving me alone with the quiet crunch of snow, and I felt something rare. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. 3 days later, Clara confronted me in the kitchen. You put the house in your name, haven't you? She demanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. I folded the dish towel carefully. Yes. How could you? After everything we've done for you. I raised an eyebrow. Done for me? Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like someone who'd lost her place in a script. I've raised your children, kept your house, paid your bills, I said quietly. If that's not enough, perhaps you should make a list of what you think I owe you. Then burn it. Her face flushed. You're being cruel. No, I said, voice steady. I'm being clear. She stormed out, footsteps echoing down the hallway. Daniel didn't follow her this time. Later that night, I heard him knock softly on my door. Dad! I opened it. His eyes looked tired, older than they should at 42. I don't know what's happening to us, he whispered. I touched his shoulder the way I did when he was small. You're finally learning what it means to stand on your own feet. It hurts, but it's necessary. He didn't reply, just nodded and walked away. The shed became my project. Day by day, I cleared it out. Boxes of old tools, rusted cans, forgotten toys. Each item told a story, some worth keeping, others best discarded. I laid down a rug, hung shelves, set a small desk by the window. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At night, I sat there with my tea, writing lists, letters, memories. The cold crept in through the walls, but it didn't matter. It was a cold I chose, and choice makes all the difference. One evening, Emma tiptoed in. She looked at the jars of nails and the stacks of paper. "Grandpa, is this your secret room?" she asked. "Not a secret," I said, smiling. "Just mine." She nodded solemnly. "I like it." Her words warmed me more than the heater ever could. But peace never lasts long in houses where resentment brews. A week later, Daniel came home late, smelling of beer. His voice was low, but Clara's was sharp. Their argument rattled through the walls. "Your father's ruining us," she hissed. He's doing what he thinks is right," Daniel muttered. "What about us?" Clara snapped. "What about me?" Their voices rose and fell, until at last the door slammed. Silence followed, heavier than any storm. I sat in the shed, pen frozen above paper. My heart ached, not for myself, but for them, for the way dependence corrodes love, the way expectation poisons gratitude. I couldn't fix their marriage. I couldn't fix their lives, but I could protect my own. And that had to be enough. Snow lingered on the ground for a week, crusting into icy patches that cracked underfoot. I spent the mornings in the shed, arranging tools, labeling boxes, shaping the room into something that felt like mine. By the third morning, I could sit there and almost forget that a house stood only 20 feet away, filled with voices that once defined my life, but now seemed like echoes from another time. But echoes have a way of clawing back. It started with Clara. She entered the shed one afternoon without knocking, her heels stabbing the wooden floor. Her eyes swept over the shelves, the rug, the desk by the window. "So this is what you've been hiding," she said. I set down my teacup. "Not hiding, building." She snorted. "Building? While we struggle with bills, you sit out here pretending you're a craftsman." I folded my hands in my lap. "I don't pretend. I simply make space for myself." Her voice rose. "You've taken everything, Harold. The accounts, the deed, even this shed. What's left for us?" I looked at her, really looked. Beneath the anger was fear, a fear of losing control, of slipping from comfort into responsibility. "You still have each other," I said quietly. Her mouth tightened. "Don't you dare patronize me. You're old. You should be grateful we let you stay here at all." For a moment, the words sliced deep, but then I remembered. This was my house, my roof, my ground. I stood, slowly, so that the silence carried more weight than any shout. "I let you stay here," I said. Color drained from her face, leaving her pale with rage. "You wouldn't." I picked up my teacup again, steady as ever. "Wouldn't I?" She turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the jar screws rattled on the bench. That evening, Daniel approached me, his face drawn. "Dad, Clara's upset." "I know," I said. She thinks you're planning to throw us out." I stirred my tea. "What do you think?" He hesitated, then sighed. "I don't know anymore." I met his eyes. "You've leaned on me so long you've forgotten how to stand. It's not too late to remember." He rubbed his temples. "We're drowning, Dad. The mortgage, the car, Emma's school, Ryan's activities." "Then cut the car," I said flatly. "Sell the extras. Take responsibility. It isn't complicated. It's just hard." He stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language. Maybe I had. In his world, sacrifice was something I existed to provide. In mine, sacrifice was a choice I'd already made too many times. 2 nights later, I heard voices through the thin walls of the shed. Clara and Daniel, arguing again. "He's poisoning the children against us," Clara hissed. "He's not," Daniel muttered. "Emma adores him. So does Ryan." "Exactly," she snapped. "They'll start choosing him over us. Do you want that?" Silence stretched. Then Clara's voice lower, colder. "Maybe it's time we reminded him whose house this really is." I froze. The pencil slipped from my hand. Whose house this is? I almost laughed. Almost. The reminder came the next morning. Clara appeared with a clipboard, a pen, and a falsely bright smile. "I've been thinking, Harold," she said. "Maybe it's time you started paying rent. After all, you got your own space now." I sipped my tea. "Rent? To whom?" "To us," she said briskly. "Daniel. And I manage the household expenses." It's only fair you contribute properly. I let the words hang in the air, sharp and absurd. Then I chuckled, softly. Clara, I said, the day I pay rent in my own house is the day pigs take flight. Her smile cracked. We're serious, Harold. We can't keep carrying you. Carrying me? I repeated. My voice dropped to a whisper, cold and even. Look in that cabinet. Every bill, every loan, every school fee I've covered for the past decade. You haven't carried me a single step. I've carried you, and now I put you down. She faltered, words failing her for once. Daniel shuffling behind her, eyes pleading. Dad, please, let's not fight. We just need a solution. There's a solution, I said. Grow up. I turned my back on them, letting silence speak again. They left soon after, but Clara wasn't finished. Later that week, while I was at the solicitor's, she tried to enter the shed. When she couldn't get in, she called a locksmith of her own. The man refused once he saw the documents proving the property was mine. When I returned, the neighbors told me they'd seen her yelling in the driveway, face red, arms flailing. I almost pitted her. Almost. That night, Daniel knocked on my door again. She's scared, he admitted. She thinks you're cutting us out completely. I looked at him for a long moment. I'm cutting out entitlement, I said. Not family. The children will always have me. But you and Clara, if you keep treating me like a burden, you'll lose me by your own choice. He swallowed hard. She'll never accept that. She faltered, words failing her for once. Daniel shuffling behind her, eyes pleading. Dad, please, let's not fight. We just need a solution. There's a solution, I said. Grow up. I turned my back on them, letting silence speak again. They left soon after, but Clara wasn't finished. Later that week, while I was at the solicitor's, she tried to enter the shed. When she couldn't get in, she called a locksmith of her own. The man refused once he saw the documents proving the property was mine. When I returned, the neighbors told me they'd seen her yelling in the driveway, face red, arms flailing. I almost pitted her. Almost. That night, Daniel knocked on my door again. She's scared, he admitted. She thinks you're cutting us out completely. I looked at him for a long moment. I'm cutting out entitlement, I said. Not family. The children will always have me. But you and Clara, if you keep treating me like a burden, you'll lose me by your own choice. He swallowed hard. She'll never accept that. Then she'll break herself against it, I said softly, because I won't move. The next morning, I made another decision. I walked to the council office and filed papers. Tenancy agreements, eviction notices, drafted but unsigned. Not to use yet, but to have ready. The clerk, a young woman with tired eyes, glanced at me. Not many your age take these steps, she said. I smiled faintly. Not many my age are pushed into a shed. She nodded, sympathy flickering across her face. Good luck, Mr. Whitmore. With the papers in my folder, I walked home lighter than I'd felt in years. Because sometimes strength isn't a shout. Sometimes it depends scratching across paper, drawing lines no one else can erase. That evening, Emma came into the shed again. She sat cross-legged on the rug, her hair a wild halo. Grandpa, why are Mommy and Daddy always mad lately? She asked. I set down my pen. Children deserve truth, but measured truth. Because they're learning, I said gently. Learning that grown-ups don't always get what they want. She frowned. But you don't get what you want either. I smiled. But I do. I wanted a space of my own. And I got it. Her eyes widened, then softened. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I like your space. My throat tightened. So do I, darling. So do I. The storm in the house grew louder in the following days. Arguments slammed against the walls. Clara's glares cut sharper than knives. Daniel drifted between us like a ghost, torn, exhausted. But I stayed steady. Because the truth was simple. I had survived wars, loss, loneliness. I had buried friends, buried my wife, buried the years that once gave me purpose. And yet here I was, still standing, still unbroken. And if they thought they could push me back into silence, into shadows, they had forgotten who built the foundation they now stood on. And I was ready to remind them. The first snow had melted into mud, and with it, patience in a house thin like old fabric stretched too far. From my shed, I could hear arguments grow longer, harsher. Clara's voice carried most, sharp, cutting, relentless. Daniel spoke less and less, worn down into silence. But silence is dangerous. Silence means planning. I wasn't surprised when the police arrived. 2 officers stood in my driveway, hats pulled low against the drizzle. Clara hovered behind them, her arms folded, lips pressed into a thin, victorious line. "Mr. Whitmore?" one officer asked. "We received a call regarding a domestic dispute. Allegations of harassment." I looked past him at Clara. She smiled, brittle and smug. "Of course," I said evenly. "Would you like to see my shed first, or the house deed?" The officers blinked. "Sir." I walked calmly to the desk and retrieved a folder. I handed it over, the paper crisp, notarized, undeniable. "This property," I said, "was purchased in 1974 under my name. It remains under my name. Here are the tax receipts, mortgage records, and recent confirmations from the council. If anyone here is trespassing, officers, it isn't me." One officer glanced at Clara. "Ma'am, do you have any documents contradicting this?" Her face flushed. "He's manipulating you. He's dangerous. He locks himself in that shed, plotting, turning the children against us." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, unless you have evidence, there's nothing we can act on." Clara sputtered, rage twisting her face. Daniel appeared in the doorway, pale, silent, his hands trembling. "Thank you, gentlemen," I said calmly. "Tea before you leave?" They declined. Clara stormed inside, slamming doors. The officers left, muttering apologies. And I returned to my chair, poured another cup, and smiled, because Clara had just fired her strongest shot, and it had misfired spectacularly. But she wasn't finished. 2 days later, I received a letter, a solicitor's letter. Clara was challenging ownership, claiming implied transfer of property through financial dependency and shared residency. Laughable on its face, but dangerous if ignored. I sat at my desk and opened my own folder. Inside lay everything: my will, my deed, signed tenancy agreements I prepared but not yet used. I called my solicitor. "Enforce it," I said. There was a pause. "Are you sure, Mr. Whitmore? It will mean serving eviction notices to your son and his family." My voice didn't waver. "Do it. They mistaken kindness for weakness. That ends now." The papers were served on a Thursday morning. I wasn't present when the knock came, but I heard Clara's shriek from the shed. Daniel's voice followed, desperate, broken. "Eviction," he shouted. "You're evicting us? Dad, please." I met him at the door. His eyes were red, pleading. "I warned you." I said, "I told you entitlement has a cost. You chose not to listen." "Clara pushed it," he cried. "You know what she's like." "You let her," I answered. "That's the difference." Clara appeared behind him, the notice crumpled in her hand. "You can't do this," she spat. "I already have," I said. Her face twisted, and for a moment I thought she might strike me. Instead, she turned on Daniel. "Well, don't just stand there. Stop him." Daniel looked at me, then at her. His shoulders sagged. "I can't." That night, I locked the shed tighter than before. Not out of fear, out of certainty. A cornered animal lashes hardest. Sure enough, the next evening I found the lock tampered with. Scratches along the metal. Whoever tried hadn't succeeded. I fixed it, reinforced it, and left the broken padlock on the porch where they'd see it. A silent message. "I know. Try again and you'll fail again." Emma came to me quietly that week. She sat on the rug, knees tucked to her chest. "Grandpa," she whispered. "Mommy cries a lot now. Daddy doesn't talk." I stroked her hair gently. Sometimes people cry when they know they've made mistakes. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "Are you mad at them?" "Yes," I said truthfully. "But I still love them. That doesn't mean I'll let them hurt me anymore." She thought about that, then nodded solemnly. "I love you too. And I like your shed better anyway." I almost laughed, but my chest ached instead. The weeks dragged. Clara's anger grew brittle, hysterical. Daniel shrank into himself, moving like a shadow. The children clung to quiet corners, their laughter dimming. But I remained steady, because now, finally, they were learning the truth. I was not their safety net. I was not their wallet. I was not their victim. I was a foundation they tried to bury. And foundations do not move. Not for storms. Not for screams. Not for anyone. The notice period ended on a Monday. Rain fell in sheets, hammering the gutters, streaking the windows, and blurring the driveway into a mirror of mud and water. Inside, the house trembled under the storm, but the real storm had been building for months, and this was the day it broke. I sat in my shed that morning, a mug of black tea cooling beside me, the eviction documents stacked neatly on the desk. My solicitor had warned me it might come to confrontation. They'll resist, Mr. Whitmore. It won't be easy. Stay calm and let the bailiffs do their work. Calm was not the problem. I had practiced calm for 80 years. The problem was mercy, and I had run out of it. At 10 sharp, a white van pulled into the drive. 2 court officers stepped out, broad-shouldered men in dark jackets. They carried clipboards, wore calm expressions, and radiated an air of inevitability. Behind them, a smaller car arrived. My solicitor, umbrella in hand, lips pressed in against the rain. Clara appeared first. She flew out the front door like a storm herself, hair unkempt, dressing gown clinging to her shoulders. "You can't be here," she screamed, her voice breaking the air. "This is our home." The taller bailiff lifted a hand. "Ma'am, by order of the county court, you and your family are required to vacate the premises today. You've been given notice. We are here to enforce." Clara laughed, a wild, jagged sound. "Vacate? In this weather? Where do you expect us to go?" "That," the officer said evenly, "is not our concern." Daniel appeared next, carrying boxes already half-packed. His face was gray, hollow, like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He didn't argue. He didn't even look at me. He just shuffled down the path, water soaking his jeans, and placed a box into the boot of their car. Clara spun on him. "Are you seriously just giving up? Do something, Daniel. He's your father, for God's sake." Daniel froze, shoulders hunched, and muttered, "I can't fight him any more, Clara. We lost." The words landed like a stone between them. Clara's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her fury collapsed inward, imploding into something tighter, darker. She turned back to me. Her eyes burned through the rain, unblinking. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Old man, you'll die alone in that shed, and no one will come for you, not even your precious granddaughter." I didn't move. I didn't blink. My voice was iron. "I'd rather die alone," I said, "than live surrounded by leeches." The bailiffs moved inside. Within minutes, doors opened. Furniture scraped across the floor. Drawers were emptied. The house echoed with the sound of disassembly, of lives uprooted and tossed into bags. Clara screamed, cried, cursed. Daniel moved silently, obediently, a ghost of himself. And Emma, sweet, fragile Emma, came last. She padded out in her little rain boots, carrying a teddy bear under one arm. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She only looked up at me, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. "Do we really have to go, Grandpa?" she asked. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one that tore through me then. I crouched low, ignoring the ache in my knees, and cupped her face gently in my hands. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "You have to go with your parents. But listen to me. My shed will always be here. My door will always be open for you. When you're older, when you're strong enough, you'll understand why I did this." She nodded, biting her lip, and hugged me so tightly I felt her little heart hammering against my chest. Then Clara's shriek tore her away. "Emma, in the car, now!" Emma looked back once, eyes shining with tears, then vanished into the rain. And just like that, the house was emptied. By afternoon, the van pulled away. The car followed, its boot crammed with boxes, Clara shouting even as the windows rolled up. Daniel drove, hunched and broken. Emma pressed her face against the glass, small hand lifted in farewell, until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Silence returned, not the peaceful kind. Not yet, the silence of an execution ground, where the sentence has been carried out, but the air still quivers with what's been lost. I stood in the doorway, rain soaking my shoulders, and looked at the hollow house. Empty rooms, strip shelves, bare echoes where laughter once lived. And I felt nothing but relief. That night, I walked through the rooms. Every corner smelled different already, lighter, freer. No perfume, no cigarette smoke, no faint trace of spilled wine. Only wood, dust, and rain. I stopped in the children's room. 2 beds stood neatly made, untouched now. A stray toy car lay beneath one, forgotten in the rush. I picked it up, turned it in my hand, then placed it on the shelf. They would not return, not to stay. In the kitchen, I brewed another pot of tea. Alone, yes, but I had been alone before. The difference was that this time it was chosen. Outside, the shed light burned steady, unwavering against the storm. Inside, I wrote in my journal, "Mercy extended 2 long turns to rot. Today, I cut away the rot. The tree may stand smaller, but it will stand stronger. I closed the book, and for the first time in years, I slept without locking the shed door. The first week after their departure was a study in contrasts. The house was quieter than it had ever been, yet the silence wasn't empty. It was alive, breathing, waiting to see what I would do with it. Every creak of the floorboard seemed to ask, will you mourn or will you rebuild? I chose rebuild. On Tuesday, I moved my belongings out of the shed and back into the main house. Not all at once. I respected my shed too much for that. It had been my fortress, my sanctuary, and I would never abandon it. But the house was mine, and it was time I lived in it again. Room by room, I reclaimed the space. Clara's perfume still clung faintly to the upstairs hall, so I scrubbed the walls until the smell of soap replaced it. Daniel's cigarette burns on the porch rail mocked me, so I sanded them down and painted over them. The stains on the carpet from spilled wine, the broken cupboard door, the dent in the wall from some long-forgotten argument. I fixed them all. Each repair was an exorcism. Every stroke of paint, every tightened screw, every nail hammered home was a declaration. This is mine. Not yours. Never yours again. By Friday, the house looked different. Cleaner, brighter, like it had shed a skin it had outgrown. I slept in my own bed again. The first night, I lay awake listening for footsteps, arguments, the thump of slammed doors. But there was nothing, just a steady tick of the clock, the rain tapping on the window, and my own breathing. I smiled into the darkness and let sleep take me. Daniel tried calling once. It was Saturday morning. The phone rang, sharp and jarring, and when I saw his name on the screen, my chest tightened. Against my better judgment, I answered. Dad. His voice was cracked low. Please. Clara's, she's furious. We're staying at her sister's, but it won't last. I don't know what to do. You should have thought of that, I said flatly. There was silence. Then, I didn't want it to get this far. I couldn't stop her. You could have, I replied. You chose not to. That's on you. Don't you care? His voice rose, desperate. We're family. Blood. I let the words hang in the air, heavy as iron. Finally, I answered. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. Blood doesn't entitle you to destroy what isn't yours. You made your bed, Daniel. Now lie in it. He started to cry, quietly, brokenly. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. But then I remembered Emma's eyes, wide with fear as Clara screamed at her. I remembered the endless demands, the manipulation, the way they had tried to bury me in my own kindness. No, pity was a luxury. I hung up. He didn't call again. Emma wrote me a letter. It arrived in a pink envelope, scrawled with uneven handwriting. Inside was a single page, decorated with little stickers of stars and animals. Dear Grandpa, I miss you. Mommy is mad all the time and Daddy is sad. I want to come back to the shed. I love you. Love, Emma. I read it 3 times, my eyes blurring. Then I set it gently on my desk in the shed, where it could stay safe. I didn't reply. Not yet. She deserves stability, not a war of letters between her parents and me. One day, when she was older, when she could decide for herself, she would know where to find me. Until then, the letter was enough. The village noticed. Old Mrs. Gardner stopped me outside the post office. Saw the van last week, she said, peering at me through fog glasses. Trouble at home? I smiled faintly. No trouble anymore. Her eyes twinkled. Good for you. They were bleeding you dry, you know. Whole village talked about it. That startled me. They did. Oh, yes, she chuckled. But we all knew you'd sort it. You got that look. Like an oak tree. Doesn't matter how hard the wind blows. You don't bend. I thanked her, bought my bread, and walked home lighter. If even the village had seen what I had pretended not to, then my decision had been the only one possible. The shed, once my refuge, became my workshop again. I built small things. A birdhouse, a card box, a repair chair. The rhythm of creation soothed me. Sawdust on my hands was better than bitterness in my heart. But at night, when the tools were put away and the lights dimmed, the truth pressed in. I was alone, and I was glad for it. Alone meant free. Alone meant strong. Alone meant no one could take from me what I wasn't offering. I wrote in my journal again. Family, when poisoned, ceases to be family. Blood is water when it carries rot. Better to drink alone than to choke together. One evening, as I sat by the fire, the phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Daniel. It was Clara. I almost didn't answer. But something in me wanted to hear what venom she'd spit now that she'd lost everything. "Enjoy your victory," she snapped, voice sharp as broken glass. "I'm enjoying my peace," I said calmly. "You ruined us," she spat. "Do you know that? You destroyed your son's life. You scarred your grandchildren. All because you couldn't stand to share." I laughed then. Quiet, bitter. "Share? You mean surrender. You mean hand over my life, my home, my dignity, because you decided it was yours. No, Clara, I didn't ruin you. You ruined yourself." She went silent. Then, low and vicious, she whispered, "Right in that house, oh man, no one will remember you, not even Emma." The line went dead. I placed the phone on the table and stared into fire. Her words burned, but they didn't wound, because I already knew the truth. Emma would remember. She already had. And that was enough. The weeks stretched on, slow and deliberate, like a careful painter layering color onto a canvas. Every morning, I rose with the sun and checked the house, room by room, each corner a testament to my presence. No one would take it from me again. I started with the garden. The roses Clara had claimed as her own were cut back, pruned, shaped into something orderly. Daniel's favorite tulips had wilted after the last fight, but I planted new bulbs in their place, silent markers of renewal. By the time spring fully came, the garden wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. The shed remained my sanctuary. I installed shelves for my tools, a small desk for writing, and a stool by the window where the light fell just right. It became a library, workshop, and observation post. I watched the seasons pass through the dust-specked window, noting the changing patterns of birds, clouds, and shadows. The villagers continued to visit, quietly. Mrs. Gardner brought extra bread, Mrs. Thompson left preserves, and even old Mr. Carver nodded as I passed. None of them pried, none of them judged. They understood the balance I claimed, the space between solitude and community, between defense and trust. Daniel never returned. At first, I thought of him every day. Each memory of his pleading calls, each image of his despair haunted the edges of my mind. But slowly, the heat of anger cooled into a dull, manageable warmth. He had chosen his path, and I had chosen mine. I began walking the wood behind the house, the ones that stretched beyond the old mill, the ones I had once avoided. The trees were older than me, knotted and tall, their roots like fingers digging into the earth. I walked among them, listening to the whispers of wind through leaves, the snap of twigs underfoot. In their quiet, I found clarity. One day, while clearing a fallen branch, I discovered a hollow tree stump filled with rainwater. Peering inside, I saw a tadpole swimming lazily. It was a small life, hidden, unnoticed, but thriving. I smiled. This was proof that resilience existed even in forgotten places. Emma's letters became the rhythm of my weeks. She wrote about school, her new cat, her drawings, and the things she had learned about friendship. Each one arrived in a carefully decorated envelope, her handwriting growing steadier. With each passing month, I never sent replies. I didn't need to. She needed to feel my presence without the interference of her parents' chaos. Every letter was pinned on the shed wall above my desk, forming a mosaic of her childhood. One afternoon, a letter came with a drawing of a treehouse. In her letter, she wrote, "I want to build a treehouse with you. Can we?" I put down the letter and studied the paper. Yes, one day, when she could come freely, when the past would not shadow our moments, I would build that treehouse with her. Until then, I would wait, patiently. Clara and Daniel faded into the background of my life, like a storm that has passed. Occasionally, I glimpsed them in the distance, a car at the market, a voice across the village. But I never engaged. Their world was theirs, and mine was mine. The house had fully transformed into a home once more. Curtains hung evenly, windows sparkled, and the floors gleamed. Evenings were quiet but warm, with a fire crackling and a mug of tea steaming beside my chair. I read books. I repaired furniture. I sat in the garden and watched the sunset paint the sky in reds and oranges. Solitude was no longer a punishment. It was a companion. I had learned to love it, to let it stretch me, to let it mold me into something whole again. The turning point came unexpectedly, in the form of a small bird trapped inside the house. It had flown through an open window, panicked, and was flitting against the glass. I approached slowly, speaking softly. The bird paused, its tiny chest rising and falling. I opened the window wider and guided it gently with my hands. It hesitated for a moment, then flew out into the sunlight, wings shimmering. I realized then that this was my life now. I could guide, protect, and release but never hold too tightly. Freedom, even for someone you love, was paramount. I returned to the shed with a renewed sense of purpose. My tools were arranged neatly, the journal stacked, and the letters pinned carefully in their place. This space was my domain, my world, my safe haven. And Emma, she was a future, bright and untarnished. Winter came again, silent and white. Snow blanketed the garden, muffled the sound of the village, and made the world still. I walked outside one morning and breathed in the cold air, feeling it fill my lungs and clear my mind. I carved a small wooden bird for the garden, placing it near the tulip bed. It was simple, unadorned, but it represented persistence, life, and hope. Every morning I would glance at it, a reminder that even in the harshest seasons, something beautiful could exist. The phone remained quiet. No calls, no arguments, no threats, only peace. At night, I sat in the shed, journal open, candle flickering. I wrote of the day, of the garden, of the letters from Emma, of the birds, the trees, the snow. I wrote for clarity, for memory, for proof that life continued. I had survived their betrayal. I had survived their anger. And I had reclaimed what was mine. And then, one spring morning, the door creaked. I turned to see a small figure standing in the sunlight, her backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide with wonder. "Grandpa," she whispered. "Emma." I knelt, arms open. She ran into them, laughter bubbling, hair tangled from the wind. "I've missed you," she said, hugging me tight. "I've missed you too," I replied. No one else mattered. The house, the shed, the garden, the letters, they all existed for this moment, for her, for us. Together, we walked to the garden, sunlight on our backs, and I pointed the spot where the tree house would stand one day. "We'll build it together. I promised." She grinned. "Yes." And for the first time in years, I felt fully, completely at peace. The past had no hold over us. We were free, free to rebuild, free to create, free to live. The shed remained my sanctuary, the house my refuge, and Emma my compass. Blood could not bind. Love could. And in that love, we had everything we needed. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of spring and the promise of tomorrow. I breathed deeply, feeling the weight lift, the silence sing, the world expand. I had survived. I had endured. And now I was home. And so, after all the trials, betrayals, and losses, we finally found peace. The home is restored. The garden is blooming. And even the little workshop has become a place of comfort and creativity. But most importantly, there's Emma. Her laughter, her joy, her future. She reminds us that even after darkness, light always returns. Life teaches us one thing. The past may be heavy, people may betray, but love and patience always find their way. We cannot control everything, but we can hold on to what truly matters. Sometimes we need to let go, sometimes we need to wait, and sometimes we simply need to be there for those we love. If you've stayed with us until now, remember, the story doesn't end here. It continues in every day, in every moment when you choose light over darkness. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more stories where hope and goodness always find their way. And remember, even after the storm, peace always comes. Herb.